Well, welcome everyone. It's a thrill to have you here to the University of Maryland Francis King Carey School of Law. We are so thrilled to welcome such a distinguished group of people to come today to talk about cybercrime. Today's symposium is about what happens when criminals use network tools to abuse, stalk, harass, and torment individuals. The focus will be on what we can and should do when cybercrime turns violent and abusive. Among the topics we'll be discussing today is law's role in combating online abuse, free speech limits of a legal agenda, efforts of tech companies, and the cost and benefits of anonymizing technologies. The issues addressed today are of particular salience. Check any news source and you will read about the proliferation of online threats and the revelation of personal information. More and more network technologies are being used to torment, terrorize, and deprive individuals of crucial life opportunities, and most often these are women and minorities. We are grateful to have you all here to talk about the pressing issue of cyber stalking and other forms of online abuse. It is exciting to welcome my colleagues in Maryland Carey Law experts from a wide array of backgrounds. We will hear from investigators, prosecutors, victim advocates, private practitioners, legal academics, and trust and safety experts working at tech companies. Today is an exciting culmination of lots of work, and I want to thank John Lynch, Chief of CSIPs, Mick Stawaz, Deputy Chief of Computer Crime, and the rest of the CSIPs team, as well as the leadership of the Department of Justice Criminal Division. We are especially grateful to the Department of Justice, Anitha Ibrahim and Frank Lim, for reaching out to Maryland Carey Law and asking us to join in this important effort. They have spent so much time and energy putting this together, and we are most appreciative. We have three exciting keynotes: Kenneth Blanco, Acting Assistant Attorney General, Criminal Division, Department of Justice; Anne-Marie Chiarini, Cyber Civil Rights Initiative; and Andrew McCabe, the Deputy Director, Federal Bureau of Investigations. One of the great things about being dean is sometimes you get to control the microphone, and despite being told not to, I also need to take a moment to say something about Danielle Citron, who I know was very active in putting this together. I first became dean, and the promise I made to all of the faculty is I would read every book that the faculty had written. Not every article. I wouldn't have been able to do my job. So the first book on my list was Danielle Citron's book, and if you haven't read it, you need to. I will say don't read it late at night because it's one of the scariest academic books I've ever read. So Danielle, where's Danielle? Thank you for all your work in putting this together. It is now my pleasure to introduce the first keynote speaker today, Mr. Ken Blanco. Mr. Blanco is the Acting Assistant Attorney General of the Department of Justice Criminal Division. He has been with the Department of Justice for almost 20 years, both in Washington, D.C. and in Miami at the U.S. Attorney's Office. Mr. Blanco has served in the various roles, including the Chief of the Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs Section and Deputy Assistant Attorney General. Prior to joining the Department of Justice, Mr. Blanco was a state prosecutor in Miami. Thank you for joining us today, and please welcome Mr. Blanco.
Good morning. What a great venue, and what an important event. I want to thank all of you for coming to the third annual Cyber Symposium. As you can tell, this is a very important event, and these are very important issues. This event is put on by our Computer Crime and Intellectual Property section, co-hosts it every year, and never fails to have a great agenda. So all of you folks, thank you so much for that. This year is no exception. We are proud to partner with the University of Maryland's Francis King Carey School of Law, to whom we owe a tremendous amount of gratitude for making this event possible. Special thanks to you, Dean Tobin, for your very warm welcome, and Professor Danielle Citron for all your hard and exceptional work. Thank you so much. Each year, this symposium provides an opportunity for us to think critically about specific topics in cybercrime. It gives us an opportunity to connect with the larger community about how we fight cybercrime at the Department of Justice, and it allows us to engage in a reasoned discussion about some of the hardest issues we face in protecting public safety in an online world. This annual symposium gives us an opportunity to ask many questions. For example, one, what do we need to focus on in cybercrime? Who else has equities affected by efforts to address this threat? What are their ideas? What can we do better, more efficiently, and more effectively? How can we deliver better justice for the American people? These are not rhetorical questions. These questions are reasoned questions, and they are here today, and they're the reason for you to be here today, to have that discussion. This topic in this year's symposium, When Cybercrime Turns Violent and Abusive, has unfortunately become a growth industry in our casework and an area of increased focus for our computer crime team. The terms in this area can be confusing, and some of them overlap, but for today's purposes, we are talking about the entire gamut: cyberbullying, cyber harassment, cyber threats, cyber stalking, sextortion, revenge porn, non-consensual pornography, swatting, doxing. We could spend an entire morning trying to describe and define these terms, but I expect the discussions throughout today will help us understand each of these terms better, as well as what they have in common and how they may be different. We recognize that many of these behaviors really are crimes against Americans' cherished rights to privacy, and the violations of privacy that happen through these forms of abuse have a tremendous and long-lasting harm upon its victims. When a person has their intimate photos stolen and then threatened by having them exposed to family, to friends, employers, victims often are humiliated and feel powerless. In extreme cases, they may be fired from their jobs, forced to move or change schools, and live in constant fear of sexual or other physical violence. Many of you may be wondering why we are here today. Let me give you a number of examples. They are very, very important as we move forward. In one case, victims of serial sextortion were so afraid they would not even leave their homes alone. One needed to be escorted everywhere she went, walking outside even after dark. Another had to sleep in her mother's bed even at night. A teenager, imagine, a teenager afraid to sleep in her own bed. Victims may contemplate suicide as a result of this terrifying fear. We are not talking about sensitive people. We are talking about people who are serious people that these things happen to. We are talking about targets of attack, designated to hurt people, to violate privacy, and do very real damage to people. Even though I am sure many of you here recognize and accept the seriousness of these harms, these acts can create to people. Some of you may be wondering, why are the feds involved? Why am I here, the head of the criminal division of the Department of Justice, discussing this topic with you? Why is the department dedicating a whole day about it? The internet has changed the landscape of crimes significantly. While it is true that stalking, bullying, and harassment have more commonly been dealt by local law enforcement or outside the criminal justice system, the increased use of computers and mobile networks has turned many such crimes into multi-jurisdictional and even multinational crimes. A criminal in one state can easily disseminate graphic images and personal identifying information of his victims in other states to viewers around the world. He can store these images and information on servers in unfriendly countries and unfriendly jurisdictions using proxies to conceal their true identity and location. He can threaten and extort victims using end-to-end encryption communication applications that store little or no information about the subscribers. Without leaving his home, the perpetrator can commit an elaborate and hard-to-trace scheme using technology easily accessible to anyone. Worse, someone with no technical sophistication at all can hire someone to do the harassment for him, from a dark market online. The internet has not only complicated crimes, but it has magnified them as well. Stalking need not be from the bushes, and harassment goes well beyond a momentary encounter in the streets or in a hallway. Threats and intimidation can be piped into victims' own bedroom at any hour, and the internet never, never forgets. Whether due to greater opportunity or less fear of being caught, the commission of these types of crimes and offenses is increasingly widespread. A study released in July 2017 by the Pew Research Center found that 4 in 10 Americans has personally experienced online harassment, and 62% consider it to be a major problem. Nearly 20% of surveyed respondents had experienced severe forms of online harassment, including physical threats, sustained harassment, stalking, or sexual harassment. We have prosecuted cases where one defendant victimized hundreds of people he had never met from halfway around the world. Put simply, too many of our friends, family, neighbors are being hurt, and we need to find a better way to stop it. The internet has thrived with no one entity or person controlling its development. And similarly, no one entity or person can tame the horrific offenses and abuses happening throughout the internet. Federal law enforcement has a role to play, but certainly cannot do it alone. This is why I'm so encouraged by today's symposium. In addition to our strong law enforcement presence, we have also with us today many of the brightest academics, policy advocates, victim advocates, civil attorneys, and major technology companies represented and engaged in these topics today. For our part, we believe that as violence and abuse moves online, experts in conducting online investigation must be there too. The U.S. Department of Justice has exactly that experience, and so we are uniquely able to help. We are proud of the successes we have in fighting these crimes. In recent years, the Department's prosecutors around the country and around the world have obtained convictions in numerous hard-fought cyberstalking, sextortion, and swatting cases. I will highlight just a few with you this morning. Last year, federal prosecutors obtained a 57-month sentence against Michael Ford, a Department of State employee at the London Embassy, for engaging in a widespread international computer hacking, cyberstalking, and sextortion campaign. Ford's scheme had many steps, but it's worth explaining in some detail. He would start by sending emails to thousands of potential victims pretending to be from his target's email provider. His fake emails would warn that a victim's online account would be deleted if she or he did not verify the passwords. If a victim was tricked into sending the passwords, Ford then hacked the email and social media accounts of that person, thousands of them, where he searched for sexually explicit photographs. Once Ford located private photos, he continued to search for more information about those victims, including their home address, their work address, their schools, employment information, names and contacts of friends and family members. Ford then used the stolen photographs and information to engage an online cyberstalking campaign, demanding additional sexually explicit materials and personal information. Ford emailed his victims and then stole their photographs, attached and threatened those photographs to release those photos to other people if they did not submit to his demands. When the victims refused to comply or threatened to go to the police or begged Ford to leave them alone, Ford responded with additional threats. For example, Ford wrote in one email, "Don't worry, quote, it's not like I don't know where you live." Then he sent another email to the victim with her home address. He even described the victim's home to her, stating, quote, "I like your red fire escape ladder, easy to climb," end quote. He threatened to post her photographs on an escort website along with her phone number and home address. Ford followed through with his threats on several occasions, sending his victims sexually explicit photographs to family members and friends. The ability of one individual to terrorize so many victims in such an intimate way is truly horrifying and should scare everyone. Cyberstalking cases can also turn deadly. Last year, federal prosecutors obtained 3 life sentences for defendants David Matusevich, his mother Lauren Matusevich, and his sister Amy Gonzalez. In the first case to allege the federal stalking statutes resulting in death enhancement. The defendants engaged in a prolonged campaign to surveil and harass David Matusevich's ex-wife, Christine Belford, during a bitter child custody dispute over the 3 children that began in 2007. The interstate stalking and cyber stalking conduct took the form of a 3-pronged campaign by the defendants, which used the internet, the mail, and third parties to vilify and torment Miss Belford and her children. David Matusevich and his family created a webpage called, quote, Grandmother's Impossible Choice, which was dedicated to casting Miss Belford as a crazed, mentally unstable child molester. David Matusevich and his family also posted surreptitious videos of Miss Belford and her children on YouTube, posted defamatory comments online, and bombarded people in Miss Belford's life with emails and written letters repeating these same pernicious accusations. The Matusevich's family sent written letters to the children's schools, Miss Belford's neighbors, and her church, where she taught Sunday school. In February 2013, the 3 defendants, along with David's father, Thomas Matusevich, traveled to Delaware for a family court hearing where Thomas tragically shot and killed Miss Belford, her family friend Lauren Mulford, and himself, while also injuring 2 police officers. Investigating these offenses involves complex electronic evidence spread throughout the globe is hard enough. But when we find and apprehend perpetrators, prosecutions can be very challenging. The offenses we are discussing today came in the variety of types of conduct carried out by different types of people and different offenders. Fact patterns vary in these cases. Yet, of the types of criminal conduct I have described, only cyberstalking is directly prescribed in a dedicated section in the Federal Criminal Code. The others do not have direct controlling federal statutes, although the behavior often violates more general federal statutes. For example, while there is no specific extortion offense, such behavior may implicate the extortion, threats, or, depending on the ages of the victims, child exploitation statutes. When the basis for the extortion in the first place is stolen intimate photos taken from computers, the computer hacking statute comes into play as well. But fact patterns vary from case to case, and a statute used to charge one case may not fit in another's facts. Our first panel today will discuss some of these challenges to holding offenders accountable. I am glad to see it will cover not only federal criminal prosecution, but also include what other approaches can be accomplished through civil law or maybe even updating our laws. Some lawmakers have started to try to find a way to address more specific fact patterns. Several bills in the House of Representatives have been introduced amid a criminalizing sextortion, swatting, or doxing. I look forward to the First Amendment's panel views on how legislation can strike the right balance in prohibiting criminal conduct in this area without unduly impacting free expression. I am also very excited about our lunchtime keynote address from Anne Marie Tirarni, a professor at the Maryland Community College who found herself a victim of a non-consensual pornography and who has since then fought at every level for the rights of victims. Her story is truly inspiring, and I hope it will help encourage other victims in their fight. There is no question that more must be done to stop the alarming rise of violence and abuse on the Internet. And as I stated earlier, it will truly take efforts and commitments from a wide variety of stakeholders, far beyond the criminal investigators and prosecutors to accomplish these goals and this task. Today, we will hear from private sector victim advocates, scholars, social media companies, and privacy advocates, and others with unique experiences and perspectives. We are excited to hear how others are innovating and trying to prevent, disrupt, and mitigate such abusive online activity. In particular, we will hear from some of our largest internet companies about their efforts to protect their users. I was interested to read in the Pew study I mentioned earlier that nearly 8 to 10 Americans believe that online service providers have a duty to address harassment that occurs on their platforms. It is clear from the research and from publicly reported events that both the public and many providers view on the proper approaches to hate, abuse, and violence on the internet are evolving. We are encouraged by social media companies and others who have committed to enforcing their terms of service, which can lead to even blocking and banning subscribers that use their services for violent and abusive behavior. Our final panel today on anonymizing technologies will help shed light on some of the darkest places on the internet, which pose some of the most serious challenges to law enforcement in combating violent cybercrime. We look forward to a vigorous discussion on the cost and benefits of anonymizing technology known as Tor hidden services. I want to conclude this morning by noting that the subject matter of today's symposium and the cases I described should be signal to all of you and all of law enforcement that serves as an important role in protecting and defending against invasions of privacy and upholding this value for all Americans. We are honored to have this opportunity to engage with the entire community of stakeholders on this topic of violent and abusive cybercrime today. And I want to thank you all for being here at today's event. I also want to thank you for your time and your patience. You all have a very unique opportunity today. This is a subject matter of serious concern and one that will grow. In your discussion today, when you look at each other one-on-one, face-to-face, I want you to keep something in mind today. That what you talk about and those decisions that you come with and the policies that you are implementing make a difference to somebody. They will make a difference to a child. They will make a difference to a parent. They will make a difference to somebody. So keep that in mind when you have that discussion today. This is serious stuff. People are being hurt. They're being maimed. They are scared. It's serious. So when you talk today, it isn't about being a policy wonk. It isn't about being a government employee. These are serious matters. Remember that what you talk about today has a serious effect on people out there who you may not know, but it will affect them. Think about that in your conversation today. Thank you very much for your time.